I'm going to make one of those simple chaat recipes that I've actually picked up from one of the street chaat makers in New Delhi. Yes, I'm making aloo chaat. First things first, I'm going to heat some oil on moderate flame because I need to fry the potatoes. So let's take some potatoes now. I've peeled potatoes. I'm going to cut these in dices. If it's a medium-sized potato, like the one that I have here, you just cut them into 8 pieces, like so. Similarly, let me start cutting the rest of the potatoes. Let's transfer these potatoes in a larger bowl. With a kitchen tissue, I'm just going to dab these potatoes and make sure all the water is absorbed in this. Make sure this is nice and dry before this goes in oil. Once the potatoes are dried and ready, I'll be adding in some corn flour. Not too much corn flour because you do not want it to have excess flour. You just have to dust a little bit of corn flour so it gets nice and crisp while it's getting fried. While the oil is heated up, let me drop in the potatoes in hot oil. Just make sure you do this carefully and do not splash hot oil. If you have a smaller frying pan, make sure you fry this in 2 to 3 batches. The oil should not be overcrowded because then the potatoes tend to be a little soggy. We'll fry this on moderate flame and make sure it becomes nice and crisp on the outside and gets cooked through and through. The potatoes are fried and ready and they are cooked through and through. I'm going to strain this off the oil and transfer this in a bowl which is lined with a kitchen tissue. Just make sure all the oil is absorbed on the tissue paper before you start using this. The next thing is to pan fry the seeds of coriander. For this, I'm just going to make sure I keep tossing the coriander seeds very lightly. While the coriander is getting toasted, let's cut some onions and chilies very finely. I'm chopping some green chilies very finely. Well, alternately, if you wish to remove these while eating, you can also slice these so that it becomes easier to identify. But however, I love making this chaat with the chopped chilies. The coriander seeds are toasted and ready. Off goes the flame, and these need to cool down in the same pan. It's been 5 minutes and the toasted coriander seeds have cooled down. Let's crush these into a coarse powder. This is done and ready. Let's begin with tossing the chaat. First thing, I've discarded the tissue paper. Second thing, let's start tossing some spices in. First thing that goes in is the green chili. The next is the chopped onion, along with juliennes of ginger. With this, some chaat masala, some salt as required, very little of chili powder to just spike it up a little, seeds of fresh pomegranate, and finally, juice of some lime. Let's give this a toss very lightly so that you do not break the potatoes. And here you have this beautiful chaat which is done and ready. Once this is ready, I'm going to sprinkle the crushed and toasted coriander seeds. With this, some more pomegranate seeds, a wedge of lime, and finally, a few sprigs of coriander. Do try this simple street-style aloo chaat at home.
Hello and welcome to Rajshri Food. In this episode, I'm doing a very nice chaat recipe called the Bhel Puri. This is a very famous evening snack loved all over India. So let's take a look at the ingredients. 3 cups puffed rice or kurbura, 2 boiled potatoes chopped, 1 tomato de-seeded and chopped, 1 onion finely chopped, coriander leaves, salt, lemon, raw mango finely chopped, red chili powder, date and tamarind chutney and coriander mint chutney, few Sev Puri puris and sev. All these ingredients for bhel are generally available in all the Indian stores. Just in case you don't find the puri, you can use cracker biscuits, or you can also just fry some tortillas and just break them into your bhel. First I'm going to heat up some puffed rice in a pan. No oil, nothing, just plain puffed rice or kurmura and just keep stirring it for 2 minutes so they become nice and crunchy. The puffed rice has also changed in color a little bit, and now I'm going to remove this from this hot pan. Let the puffed rice or kurmura cool down completely and then store it in an airtight container, and you can store it for at least 15-20 days. This recipe is all about getting all the ingredients from your pantry and mixing everything together. So let's do that. So my puffed rice or my kurmura goes in. I'm going to put in all my dry ingredients first. Sev Puri. I'm just going to break it into small pieces. Some chopped onions, some chopped potatoes, coriander leaves, red chili powder to taste, salt, just a little bit because the chutneys also have some salt, lime juice. I've used two kinds of chutneys, the coriander mint chutney and the date and tamarind chutney. They're a little thick, so I'm just going to add a little bit of water and dilute them because it needs to coat the puffed rice properly. And just a little bit of salt since I've added some water. And now I'm just going to mix this well. If you like the flavor of garlic in your bhel, you can always add 1 clove of garlic in this chutney while grinding it. So it has to be this consistency. Let's add the date and tamarind chutney and the coriander mint chutney. Let's mix everything well. Don't add too much chutney from the beginning. Just add as much as you need that it coats all the puffed rice or the kurmura well. I'm going to need a little more. The taste of bhel and all the flavorings that you add in is a very personal choice. So it's up to you whether you like it sweet, you like it spicy, so you can alter it to your taste. So let's plate it, but you have to serve this immediately because otherwise it's going to go soggy very quickly. I'm going to garnish it with a little more of this sev. Crush a couple of puris, some chopped tomatoes, a little bit of coriander leaves. And I have some raw mango. It's optional. If you have it, you can add some. Gives you a nice tangy taste. And again, a nice squeeze of some lemon juice.
I'm making an extremely unusual chaat today, which is actually a fruit and vegetable chaat, which is extremely popular in Purani Delhi. Well, I'm making Kulle Ki Chaat or Kuleki Chaat. I've peeled a cucumber, I've cut it lengthwise, I've cut it into quarters, and then with the help of a spoon, I've actually scooped it out. You need to actually create a cavity because this cavity is going to be filled up. That's special. The next step is to, of course, move on to a ripe tomato, and that is also cut midway and scooped. As simple as that. The next is a boiled potato. Well, you can also use a roasted potato or a steamed potato, but nevertheless, that's upon your personal choice and preference. What you need to do is again scoop it. It's as simple as that. Let's place it here. The next one is an apple. Cut an apple into quarters. The next step is to slice off the top like so. Because what happens by slicing the top is it just gets another angle and it becomes easier to scoop that angle right there. Yeah, with the help of a knife, I'm just kind of creating a gash, a cut, so that it just becomes easier. Well, you do not have to do all of this if you get squat apples or baby apples. But again, if you do not get them, this is the trick. Let's scoop it. Well, so that's a scooped apple. Now, apple is a fruit that generally tends to oxidize or tends to turn darker or black in color. To kind of save that from happening, all you need to do is just a few sprinkles or squashes of lemon juice, a little bit of rubbing around all across the surface, and there you have the apple staying just nice and bright. And that's just one of the tricks to keep your apple good looking. The next is a papaya, and like I said, this is a recipe that actually has no recipe because whatever's available or whatever you like can be of course put to use. Papaya is a ripe papaya, of course. You need to slice off the inside, which has the seed and the lining, and it also needs to be skinned or peeled. Let's move on to the next one, which is orange. Let's cut that into a half. And then you just need to give it an incision and peel off the orange, keeping the rest of the orange intact because you don't want that to get damaged at all. Well, similarly, only and only if you have a sharp knife can you actually scoop this out, but otherwise if you do not want to, you can just leave it at that. What you can do is create a gash like so and scoop out just a little. Well, what happens with scooping and why the scooping of an orange is important is because the seeds are generally right in the center, and with the scooping, all of that just comes out. Simple. Let's move on to the last ingredient, and that is a ripe banana. All you need to do is slice off the ends of a banana and cut it into a half. Give it a gash, give it an incision, peel it, and again, a small knife or a paring knife, give it a cut like so, and then you just scoop it out with the knife itself. That's why you have a banana which is kind of scooped. Again, because this has a tendency of oxidizing, I'm adding just a few splashes of lemon juice, and that's about it. Let's place this. Once all of this, of course, is done, and you can do this a day prior, all you need to do is keep a wet towel or a wet napkin or a wet tissue paper on top of this, and this can be refrigerated. Once, of course, your guests are ready to arrive, what you need to do is start adding in the powder spices, as simple as chaat masala. This, of course, needs to be added in every cavity to begin with, and do not be bothered about how much less, how much more. It's completely personal. So let's move on to adding freshly crushed black peppercorns. The next ingredient is bura or powdered sugar. The next ingredient is cumin powder. Well, this is also roasted cumin powder. Salt. Lemon juice, and with the spoon itself, I'm going to stir all of this wonderful juice that has now been created in the cavity. Let's stir all of this. Everything gets combined, and finally, it's also a self-garnished salad, by the way. So when I say finally, I mean it because this is going to be, of course, the final ingredient, and that's actually a combination of Kabuli chana along with pomegranate or anardana. Pomegranate seeds or pomegranate kernels. With this, our Kulle Ki Chaat or Kuleki Chaat is done and ready. What I am showing you today is a Boondi Papdi Chaat. Now, chaats could get extremely complicated, while some are absolutely simple. This one is on the simpler side. What I'm using for this recipe is the star ingredient for this recipe, and that is khari bundi. Well, of course, you get this readily available. To the khari bundi, I'm adding in water, which is lukewarm. You do not need warm water or cold water, just regular tap water, and that should be good. Give it a quick stir and keep this aside so that the bundi swells up, becomes nice and soft, and also kind of blooms. Because khari bundi, of course, can be served khari by itself, or you can soften it and serve it like that. Either which ways, choice is completely yours. The next step is sweetening the dahi. Now you could use ghar ka jama dahi, and to that add in sugar. Now this is grain sugar. Now I am making this dahi mixture the way I personally like. I personally like it a tad bit on the sweeter side, because when you have a lot of these ingredients which are otherwise bland by nature, the sweet dahi and the masala on top really kind of is a combination. Let's churn this well. Do not use a blender or a mixer or a grinder or a stick blender to do this. A whisk is just perfect. Well, it's important to churn this well because one, you do not want those little lumps of curd while you're making the chaat or while you're eating the chaat. Ensure it's nice and lump free. Also, if you notice, I have categorically used grain sugar because when you're churning something with the friction of something which is soft and something that's gritty, it just kind of churns much better. It gets whisked much better. Let's keep this aside, and in the interim, let's give the bundi a stir and wait for this to bloom before we begin the assembly. The bundi has bloomed up and it's ready. Now, while making this chaat, of course, you need to do a little bit of a pre-prep. You need to source for good quality papdi. Apart from that, you need some boiled chana, you need some boiled potato, you need some chopped chilies. Now, this is something which can be completely personalized. Why I personally like using black chana, you can use Kabuli chana, you can use green chana, you can also use sprouts of your choice. Secondly, instead of potato, you can of course opt for sweet potato, you can opt for yam, purple yam is in season, you can also use that. Apart from that, chilies is something that I personally prefer, but apart from that, onions, tomatoes would also go wonderfully well. Let's begin the assembly. First things first, some papdi on the plate. Now, it just has to be randomly placed. You don't really have to assemble it in a certain pattern. To this, let's add in some boiled chana. Along with that, some boiled potatoes which have been peeled and sliced. Time to flavor all of this, beginning with roasted cumin powder, followed by just a touch of red chili powder, remembering the fact they're also going to add in green chilies, followed by black salt and a touch of chaat masala. Salt is completely subjective. You like to add it at this stage, do it. If not, just a little towards the end would also work well. The next is to move in and add in the sweetened curd, which is nice and chilled. Well, this stage, for the ones who wish to know and wish to kind of brush on their technical knowledge, is called nappage in technical French, and that is lacing something or topping something with sauce. In this case, of course, the sweetened dahi. I'm topping this up with the hero of this recipe, which is khara bundi. Just ensure that you drain out all the water from this bundi and generously add in on top of the dahi. Now is the time to repeat all these ingredients again, beginning with sweetened curd, topped up with puri. This time, I'm just going to crush it lightly. Some more of the boiled chana, some potatoes, some chilies. I'm deliberately putting the chilies on top because I do not want surprises while eating. Just a little bit of red chili powder, some cumin powder, chaat masala, and last but not the least, some black salt and regular salt. Here you have the most amazing, quick, simple, easy bundi papdi chaat, done and ready just in a few minutes.
Sev Puri is all about assembling all the ingredients, so let's do that. I'm going to take some puris. Normally in one serving, we serve like 6 puris, so I'm just going to arrange my puris. And I'm going to start placing all my ingredients one by one. So have these thinly sliced potatoes. I'm going to put some onions. If you like, you can also mash the potatoes a little bit and mix the onions with it. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt, a little bit of red chili powder, depending on how spicy you want, you can add some. A little bit of my coriander mint chutney. And some date and tamarind chutney. A nice drizzle. A little bit of save. I'm just going to arrange it in my serving plate before I garnish it. Let's garnish with coriander leaves and some finely chopped tomatoes, some raw mango if you have any, a nice generous squeeze of the lemon juice, and my Sev Puri is ready.